Oh man, The Exorcist Believer, dude, is a movie. You think you'll check
Yeah,
it out?
I might have to now. I don't know. I'm still trying. I think I'm gonna go see The Haunting of Venice and The Creator tomorrow. I'm trying to catch up on some stuff. The Exorcist isn't really on my radar yet, if I'm being honest, but maybe.
Yeah. I never saw Hunting in Venice. I was gonna watch Death on a Nile first, but still
I've
haven't
seen
gotten
Death
around
in
to it.
a I've
So
seen what did I call it? River on the Nile? I've seen that. This new one looks okay. I mean, I didn't see the original, I
it's a little
guess,
spooky.
but
I'm surprised it's still showing in theaters near you. I think you could just like
yeah.
watch it on Peacock, can't you?
I don't think so. I think it's just one of those that has stuck around in theaters because there's nothing new coming out.
Huh. Interesting. I mean, it's the power of Kenneth Branagh. It's cinema, dude. It's showing at 10:45 tonight. I might have to go
Yeah.
go make a quick
I
run.
mean, I don't think there's going to be anybody else in the theater for either of those, but it should be a good time.
When I bought my ticket to see Exorcist Believer today, it said there was three other people in the theater, like the row behind me, and then I got there and no one was there until like Nicole Kidman started playing, and then two people showed up in my row, so it wasn't even the same, but it was a very dead theater experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be good or bad.
I need to time it up like that. Fucking Nicole Kidman. I always come in way before she shows up. So
Hey man, 25 minutes after the listed showtime, and you'll be hitting
fucking
right
ridiculous.
there.
Trailers fucking suck, dude. I don't even like watching them.
Well, let's play one real quick. Hello and welcome to Kody and Korbin Have a Podcast, the show where two former roommates talk about The Exorcist.
Hey, where'd this come from? I found it.
Well, let's both play.
You really don't want me to play?
Captain Howdy said no.
Who's Captain Howdy?
You're gonna die up there.
I need reassignment.
You're the best we've got.
I think I've lost my faith.
Is there someone inside you?
Sometimes.
Who is it?
I don't know.
Is it Captain Howdy? You ever heard of exorcism?
How do you go about getting an exorcism?
I beg your pardon? I'm Damien Karras. I'd like to help you. Where's Reagan? In here with us.
As always, I'm your host, Corbin Zvokel, and joining me in this religious ceremony is my co-host, Kody Webb. Kody, what's going on, man?
I'm very excited to be back. We're back for another October episode here at KHAP, still keeping it spooky. And yeah, this is probably one of the last episodes of the month as well. It's kind of a good capper, I think, bringing in a classic. But yeah, I'm excited to be here, man. I think it should definitely be a fun episode.
Well, yeah, Kody, I don't know if you know this, but today is Halloween, believe it or not.
Whoa.
That's crazy. Happy Halloween, man.
Happy Halloween, everybody. Yeah, I historically don't love the holiday, but I do like the movies surrounding the holidays a little bit. So happy Halloween, everybody. Stay safe.
If you're listening to us this a little late, happy All Saints Day to all our Catholics listening to the Exorcist episode here. We'll
Yo,
cover all of Happy Thanksgiving, Black Friday.
everything in the next month, I'll just cover in this episode. Yeah, thanks. Also, the new Thanksgiving movie is going to be a horror slasher, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's not too far away either. So if you're listening late, check our feed because we might be doing that one as well.
Horror does not have to stay within the month of October. It's important to recognize that. Kody, why did you want to talk
Why me? Why did you pick me?
The Exorcist for our final Spooktober pick?
And this has been obviously well said on this podcast. I'm not the biggest horror guy here, so I kind of wanted to expand my horizons a little bit more.
At this point, Kody, I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
I've seen a lot.
you're better than you used to be.
Yeah, true. But also, if you caught our last episode, I listed out my like Mount Rushmore of horror movies. Terrible list. So this is kind of the reasoning as
Unprepared.
well. I just want to see kind of better horror movies, I guess. And of course, this is regarded as one of the best of all time. So I thought it'd be a fun one to go over for an episode. Also, too, I mean, we always do things well. If you've listened, I named a few options. Feel out, what Corbin would think, because obviously I haven't seen most of these movies. I believe I gave out Silence of the Lambs, Nightmare on Elm Street, and this film, which I think all three of those would have been fun. But I think just like the best movie is probably The Exorcist. So I feel like it'd be a fun capper to Spooktober. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that Mount Rushmore that we did. this was not on my Mount Rushmore, but like I would say it's right off of it. When I look at my like list of horror films, this is in like the 5-6 spot for me. I really do love this movie a lot. And it's why it's the one I identified of those three that I'd really like to talk about. Also, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, Exorcist Believer is in theaters. It's getting critically panned, so it like gives us a little bit of chance to talk about that. We mentioned David Gordon Green in our last episode, the Bones and All one, or 2 episodes ago, Bones and All. Of course, it's also got the connection to our last episode, It, being, at one time the highest grossing horror film of all time, It, which is now holding that title. And then also, of course, I don't know if you know this, Kody, but director of this film, William Friedkin, recently passed away at the beginning of August this year. So rest in peace to him. It gives us a chance to talk about his work in this film as well.
And obviously RIP to Mr. Friedkin, a very good director, which we'll go into a lot. But yeah, the passing sort of timing as well is of course a little spooky. So I guess that's good for him. But yeah, RIP, that is sad.
We'll steal it from our friends over at the RCR, a little bagpipes for Friedkin.
They've lost the bagpipes too.
I haven't heard him. I was thinking about that recently. I haven't heard him recently. Bring it
So
back.
we can steal it, and it's just our own idea now. Yeah, that's an old concept for them. Yeah.
It's we've reached the end of the statute of limitations. It's up for grabs. Kody, do you remember? Tell me about this first time watching experience. What was the setting? Another daytime flick?
Yeah, so I didn't check it out in theaters, unfortunately. We weren't around back then. And like I said, I mean, this was the first time, obviously, I was watching this film. I watched it a couple days ago on HBO Max. Max, I'm sorry. Apologies to HBO if you're listening. But yeah, watch it through a streamer. I did watch it at nighttime. I wanted to definitely do that this time. Make it a little bit more spooky, give it a little bit more ambiance. But yeah, I don't think I had the experience you did this week, unfortunately. Do you remember the first time you watched it, though, Corbino?
So the first time I saw it was in June of 2021. Shout out the Letterbox for being able to show that off. I think it was a little bit of a mix between I watched part of it on an airplane and the rest of it like very late at night in a hotel bed as I was doing some traveling, heading to Seattle on a trip with Mina. So that was the first time I watched it. And then even before that, like this background that we both have that is on the cover of the DVD, like my parents, in our big rack of DVDs that we've had, like this movie always existed. And while I never watched it, just this cover has had such like a lasting impact on me and it's always stuck with me as something super memorable. So I have very early memories of seeing this just around in the house. And then this week I got the chance to actually go see it in a theater. It was showing at a couple different theaters actually here in New York, obviously spooky, October season. And I was really grateful to have a chance to sit down and see it on the big screen because it was
I'm definitely jealous. I feel like on the big screen it would be obviously even better. I definitely back as well what you're saying kind of about the poster, the cover for the movie. I think it's one of the most iconic of all time, and even though I'd never seen this movie, I knew the poster pretty well. So shout out to that. Whoever kind of the graphics guy on that was in the 70s absolutely killed it. And then past that, I'm jealous. I mean, I wish they were showing it in kind of theaters near me as well. This week, funny enough, Regal, which is the theaters I go to a lot near me, they're running a lot of The Nightmare Before Christmas, but not a ton of The Exorcist, unfortunately. But I might check that out as well. But I like that too, where in the theaters, they kind of mix it up during October and show a lot of different stuff. I think that is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, tomorrow I'm going to go see some movies as well. I'm always trying to take advantage any chance I can to see an old movie on the big screen because you never know when it'll come back around. So even the Vivitch I saw a couple weeks ago, that movie came out a few years ago and I missed it. I got a chance to catch it in theaters, which was cool.
Facts. Always better on the big screen. I mean, it has to be. Yeah.
Initial thoughts. I'll get it started here. And something I just wanted to talk about right off the bat that I think is really cool. I don't know if you know this, Cody. This movie was nominated for Best Picture. Isn't that kind of crazy?
Yeah, that is crazy, honestly. I feel like especially in the modern days, a horror film like this would kind of not get considered as much maybe. But I do like that. I mean, what other movies came out in 73? I don't know. But I think this is probably one of the better ones, I would guess.
Yeah, so it ended up getting 10 total nominations. William Peter Blatty, the author of the original book and the writer of the screenplay, won Best Adapted Screenplay, and the sound engineers took home Best Sound. But I think it's just really cool that this movie, it was the very first horror movie, and honestly, one of probably the last horror movies to ever be nominated for Best Picture. And also in its own way, you have classic Hitchcock films prior to this, and you've got your Polanski Rosemary's Babies, but this is like the first modern horror movie. And everything about horror over the next 50 years, which also that's something we can mention. This is the 50th anniversary coming up of this movie being released this December. Over the next 50 years is heavily influenced by this. And horror goes so much more in the direction of something like this than your like Psychos or The Birds or Rosemary's Baby. And I think a lot of that has to do with the realism that we'll talk about coming up. I'll throw it over to you. What are some of your initial thoughts?
Just bouncing off that too, I didn't even think about that. That is insane. Like this movie came out 50 years ago. I feel like that is hard to even kind of comprehend how long ago that is, but it still holds up, I think, which is even crazier. So that was pretty cool. I did want to touch on some things off the top. Obviously, first time coming into this movie, I didn't know what to expect. And like the opening scene was not kind of what I expected at all. I was kind of getting like Black Adam vibes a little bit. There's a scavenger in the desert and they found something, and some little kids running around looking for somebody. I don't know why, but I just thought of Black Adam. But I think it's weird kind of how this movie is constructed a little bit, just because obviously the Max von Sydow character really isn't in it that much. And then kind of open with him. And I mean, obviously he comes in at the very, very end as well. I think it's kind of just an interesting strategy to kind of bring in the actor that I know most, at least. And obviously this is 50 years ago, so I don't know most of these people, but I feel like people know who Max von Sydow is. So I thought his use was interesting. But I mean, with that, like, this is an incredibly small cast. And I like that a lot, just because it really fleshes out kind of every single one of the main characters. Obviously, the two ones that we really focus on is what's his face, Karras, and as well Ellen
Burstyn,
excuse me. If you listen to Ellen, I do apologize, but I thought both of them, specifically the acting and the writing, was something that stood out and something I didn't really expect for a horror. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because like it's very naturalistic. All the actors, they've some of them have gone on to be more popular. I think Ellen Burstyn especially, but like it was a relatively unknown cast at the time. Especially the studio kind of pushed back. They wanted some bigger names involved, but like Friedkin was really passionate about having these specific people and felt that this was the right move. And I think they all do a fantastic job of working together, creating that real mother-daughter relationship. Whether it be with Father Karras or Father Merrin, you see the pains of their faiths and the way that they're tested throughout the movie. And I think it's really incredible. Something I wanted to mention, and I was listening to our buddies over at the Rough Cut Retrospective do their episode on The Shining recently, and at the end of it, Jackson had Carter do like a blind raking of some old horror monsters and the effect or like how popular they are in the 21st century. And you talk about like, vampires and werewolves and mummies and like all these classic monsters that have kind of fallen out of favor. And especially, zombies has become all the more popular in the 21st century. Demonic possession and this like particular genre of horror, I feel like since The Exorcist has just remained rather steady and popular and like very consistently in each decade. There are examples of movies similar to this. And even now, this year in 2023, we have a new Exorcist movie coming out. The Conjuring series is heavily, adjacent to these ideas of like the religious demonic possession. So I think it's just really interesting to see that like this is it really started the genre and has continued in the way, a lot of different types of horror have fluctuated over the years.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say earlier. I mean, just looking at our past KHAP episodes as well, like The Conjuring, Insidious, I feel like both of those specifically take a lot from this movie. So, I mean, like I was saying, it's crazy that it's 50 years old, but kind of like the ideas that it uses are still being used in like kind of the classic modern horror movies today, I feel like. So just the influence of this movie altogether, I think is pretty impressive. And like I said, the fact that it even stands the test of time, you know, on a 50-year rewatch from some kid, you know, way down the line, I think is very impressive. Yeah.
And hell, even John Carpenter's Halloween that comes out 5 years later, whether it be kind of the similarities in the score or just like that general feeling of like, let's set this up as a normal community in a normal real world that then is infected and plagued by something, you know, beyond it and more horrifying. And that, like, you can see the influence there. It continues on in tons of things we've talked about. This movie was rated R, but you know, the MPAA board was heavily considering an X rating. And a lot of people had strong reactions in the theater. There was lawsuits there, you know, just like the greater lore of like how awful this movie is also something really interesting to look into. Despite that fact, it was extremely popular. It made $193 million in its initial run, and then subsequently has a lifetime gross of 440 million because of, you know, just like every time it gets re-released, people go and see it because it's a, like you said, it holds up.
100%. And that doesn't surprise me. I thought for a second you were going to say they were thinking about making it PG-13. I was going to say, what are you talking about? But yeah, our ugly category, it could get a little deep, I think, here, because there's a lot of just like vulgar stuff in this. But at the same time, I think, like you said, in a sense, like this, you know, devil character, that's kind of what makes it realistic. There's a lot of specific stuff I'm thinking of if you've seen this movie, but we'll get to it. But yeah, I agree. I think for the time in the 70s too, this is probably a hard R. Like just like gore wise and obviously body movement wise, it's pretty bad. So that doesn't surprise me too much. One other thing I want to talk about here as well, kind of switching subjects, but Corbin, what do you think about the just like structure setup of these stairs that are right out of the apartment? Do you think it's something that, you know, is like safe or anything like that? I don't know. I don't think we need to continue having these stairs as steep as they are, but that could just be me.
They remind me, they're like the John Wick stairs, Kody. It's like, why are they there? You know? I think that's a real location that they filmed that at. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe I could, you know, do some research and I might be wrong, but yeah, it's 1973, man. Times were different. The OSHA was not around to be checking in on stuff like that.
I mean, at some point you got to like create a blockade or something. I mean, when it happens,
A net. It's like, you know, at baseball stadiums will just start installing nets there to protect the people who, you know, might fall in.
That'd be perfect. But yeah, it's just kind of like, I like the plot device of like there's something right next to the house that can like, you know, kill somebody instantly, almost in a sense. I don't know, kind of them using it multiple times. I don't know. I think it's a little lazy, but I just think it's funny that we have multiple just, you know, death by stairs in like the scariest horror movie of all time.
Chekhov's staircase, I think is what it's called, Kody.
Yeah.
Would you believe of those 10 Oscars, not one of them was for makeup and hairstyling because that Oscar did not exist until 1981.
This is probably one of the pioneers to be like, why does a category like this not exist? Because we did it unbelievably great. But yeah, I think that's, and we'll get into the good here, but the like practical physical effects on, you know, the daughter characters, unbelievable. So that's funny it wasn't around, but maybe they gave it like an honorary award, you know, a few years later.
IMDB Known For.
Do I know you? I mean, where do I know you from?
Let's start with Ellen Burstyn. Her 4, Requiem for a Dream, Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, The Exorcist, and The Last Picture Show. Requiem for a Dream, of course, a favorite of mine. Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore, Martin Scorsese, very early work from him, which I think is pretty cool. And then, of course, The Last Picture Show, Peter Bogdanovich from 1971. Did you know this actress from anything, Kody?
Well, I have seen Requiem for a Dream, but I didn't like make the connection until I went to the IMDb page. I was like, oh yeah, that is her. Because obviously, I mean, it's a pretty big, you know, gap in between performances there, I would say.
And she's looks different for sure.
Yeah, she's a little just like, you know, crazy and mentally unstable in Requiem for a Dream, which is a really, really great performance, obviously Oscar worthy. But yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't really know these other 2 pictures too well. Obviously, like you said, working with Scorsese, so I think she's pretty well respected to work with a few good directors. I wanted to ask you as well, is Requiem for a Dream, is that still in your top 4 for Letterboxd? Because I think it was there for a while, wasn't it?
I don't think when I made my account, I ever put it in my 4 necessarily. And
Yeah, definitely did.
it's not in there. Moneyball's been up there in the 4 for a while.
I think you're in denial because I definitely remember it being there at some point. But yeah, no, I think Ellen Burns is awesome, and she definitely carries this movie. So
I really enjoy Requiem. I think it's fallen in my favor for sure.
I don't know if I
but
enjoy
I
it.
still think
I don't know.
it's like a technical marvel.
I don't know if that's the right word. You're saying you enjoy Requiem for a Dream, but yeah, it's good. It's definitely good cinema. I don't
Also,
enjoy watching it, I'll be honest.
Ellen Burstyn nominated for Requiem for a Dream, did not win.
Oh, I thought she won. Tough.
Should have won.
You just
Messed
deserved
up.
that. Yeah, that was a great performance.
In our revisionist cap history, she did win. She actually won an Oscar for Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore and was nominated for Requiem for a Dream. Max von Sydow, Flash Gordon, The Seventh Seal, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close, and Minority Report.
Interesting combination here for Max von Sydow. I have seen Flash Gordon, but it was a very long time ago, so I don't remember his part too well in that. I haven't seen The Seventh Seal, but I mean, I feel like film bro wise and just like film classic wise, that's definitely the top of a lot of people's list. So probably one I should check out. A Minority Report, I think that's a good movie, and Max von Sydow is in it a little bit, so I like that. I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this too, but Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. Personally, I forgot this movie even existed, and I didn't know Max von Sydow was even in it. So I think that's kind of a weird inclusion for sure.
His character's name is the Renter. He is fourth billed, but I honestly can't say like if his character's only the Renter. Listen, I don't know. I don't know what kind of role he plays. I haven't seen the movie. Maybe we throw Star Wars: The Force Awakens, because he has such a pivotal role in the first 5 minutes of that film on there.
He's awesome in that. I was gonna say that. Where's The Force Awakens at? He's in Game of Thrones for like 3 episodes. Where's that at? And then, of course, the big one that's missing here too, I think, is Shutter Island, which I think he actually has at least a memorable role in that one. But
The
yeah,
Nazi.
I don't. Yeah, not great. But I don't understand the inclusion of Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close in this at all. That one kind of baffles me.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I will say I have seen The Seventh Seal. I did watch it in one of my film classes,
Nice.
and I do really like the movie. It is very like slow, introspective. Ingmar Bergman, a knight playing chess with death on the beach, like really sick imagery, but not necessarily like what is. It doesn't really compare to like what modern cinema is. It's a different thing in a certain way. Modern audiences might not love it, but you can appreciate the art of it. I'll say that. Linda Blair, The Exorcist, The Exorcist 2, The Heretic, Savage Island, Savage Streets. Of course, this is Reagan. I don't know. She plays different characters, so I don't think so. I think she just happened to be in the movie Savage Streets, which has a 3.3 out of 10, and Savage Island, which has a 3.3 out of 10, and Savage Streets, which has a 6.2 out of 10. Not great.
Again, obviously, I haven't seen either of those Savage movies, which is sad, but I haven't seen The Exorcist. That's cool they brought her back for the sequel as well, I think. I don't think any of the sequels were any good. I
believe I've heard that The Exorcist 3 is actually like a really good film.
All right, well, fair enough. I don't know if I'll go down the Exorcist kind of sequel train, if I'm being honest. But I think that is cool that they brought her back for the second one. I'm kind of wondering what kind of direction they took as well, because I feel like the ending here is pretty clear. So that's weird. But yeah, I think Linda Blair is 100% one of the standouts here. So I'm surprised she didn't get a ton of like, big franchise work, I guess, in the 80s or whatever. But obviously a different time period. So hard to gauge where she kind of fitted in the industry.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I know following the release of this movie, she had to like hire some bodyguards to follow her around. She had like a rough go of it being the child actress in this, and like, people just being really weird because this movie glorified Satan, and she played this possessed kid. It was very tough for her, I think. And I hope she's doing well. She does, spoiler alert, she does make a appearance at the end of Exorcist Believer. That's all I'll say.
That is cool. Well, I like that cameo. And also another little thing, I believe she's in the first Scream. I think she's just one of the high schooler, or no, she's got to be
She's
older.
listed as uncredited reporter.
Okay. So she just had like a little fun cameo, I think, which is cool because obviously she didn't go on to, continue to make, tons of horror movies. So just a little shout out, I think, in a fun movie or funner, I guess, movie like Scream, I think is cool.
All right, and then finally we'll talk about William Friedkin, the director, also the director of To Live and Die in LA, The French Connection, and Killer Joe, with The Exorcist rounding out his four. Have you seen any other Friedkin films, Kody?
I've not here. The French Connection, I've definitely heard of, and Killer Joe, I know has like Matthew McConaughey in it. That's pretty much it. I think Friedkin, like I said, obviously recently passed, and was a pretty good director. So I might have to go and check out some of his best work here, but I unfortunately have not seen any of these.
I have not seen anything else that Friedkin's done, but I
I'm
will
surprised you haven't seen
say
Killer
it's
Joe.
it's cool looking at the course of his career because he's a guy who kind of started out doing TV movies, TV series, and then also like some documentary stuff in direction. And that's kind of where he like made his way. And that like when you look at this movie in that context, it kind of adds to like the way it's shot, the way it feels, and again that realism thing. Also, I know he did some music videos and stuff late straight, some Barbara Streisand action.
Love that. But hey man, a lot of good directors got their start in the music video industry. So yeah, I respect it.
All right, Kody, let's move on to the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, I'll kick us off. And I've already been talking about it a little bit here, but I think probably my favorite thing about this movie is kind of the duality of Linda Blair's performance and kind of the practical effects surrounding her character. Honestly, from an actress, of this age as well, who's pretty young, I think it's unbelievably ridiculous how good she is. Honestly, probably robbed of an Oscar. She probably wasn't even nommed here,
She
but I
was
think
nommed.
she was. Wow. Well, she got absolutely robbed in 74 or whatever. So shame on the Academy. But like I said to you, I like kind of the character behind it as well. It's a really powerful character, obviously, and it's just incredibly intense the entire time. I think you kind of start off and you don't know what to expect a little bit, and then she kind of starts cursing a little bit, and you're like, okay, what's really going on? And then this devil character pretty much just takes over completely, start doing all these like Jean Grey powers and stuff, like moving stuff all over the place, turning its head backwards. Like the visuals on it, I think, are just as good as the performance. So I think just those, two smaller things combined really make kind of one of the coolest and one of the best acted villains as well that I've seen in a long time. Yeah.
And it's that thing, like we said, 50, like when you think the number 50 years ago, like it's incredible the level that they are operating at. I know for the head spinning around, like that's just a big life-size doll dummy that they had creating that they did for that. But like it looks so good and it looks incredible. The floating and every little aspect of it is really awesome. And then you talk about the youthfulness of Linda Blair. Let's talk about the youthfulness of Max von Sydow, who is a 43-year-old guy at the time of filming this, but he's playing a character who's like 80, and they've got this incredible makeup on him, and he's like doing this fantastic like old man limping around performance, and it is undeniably believable. It's incredible. So often we see, we've got a fucking Napoleon movie where 50-year-old Joaquin Phoenix is playing 25-year-old Napoleon this year. We got Leo and Killers of the Flower Moon playing a 25-year-old guy when he's 48. How often nowadays do we get to see like young actors take on this like older role? We need bring that back. We need to see more make people old.
I think you found your calling in the old man makeup department. But yeah,
We
I
need
did
more
notice
Benjamin Buttons.
Oh, please God, no.
Brad Pitt as an old hot guy, Kody.
I mean, I'd watch it, but I don't know.
Old hot baby, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, same difference. But I think it is cool because I mean, when I started watching this movie originally, like I said, I mean, Max von Sydow is in the opening scene.
Well, it's also crazy because it looks like what he ended up looking like. That's the thing. It's like recognizable for us.
I was like, wait, that's the exact same guy who was in The Force Awakens. Like, you could put them side by side, and I think they would look exactly the same. So the makeup is great. I mean, the makeup on the devil as well is great. I don't know what to call her character, if I'm being honest.
Zuzu is the demon that infests her, but I
Zuzu.
mean Reagan, you could, you could
Yeah, Reagan, I guess, but those are both boring. I'll call him Zuzu, I guess. I didn't know his name.
Pazuzu.
But I think Max von Sydow's great, and I think his character as well. It's pretty interesting. Like I said, the opening is whatever. It's kind of just like some Indiana Jones ripoff or whatever. But when he comes in at the end to perform The Exorcist, I think that is probably my favorite scene of the entire film. And first off, just because he comes in and he like has experience, he knows what he's doing. Everybody else, even Karis, is like, there's no experts on this in the world. Like, I have to go and do a ton of research because I have no idea what I'm talking about. So to have this old guy walk in and be like, all right, this is exactly what you're gonna do. Don't talk to him, don't listen to him, don't do anything, just listen to me. I like that he kind of comes in and knows what he's doing. And then along with that, I mean, it's just kind of the most iconic scene as well, I feel like. You have the, iconic line, may the power of Christ compel you. I don't think they said that enough times. And then like Zuzu like rising up on the bed as well. It's just a really, really cool visual that I don't think obviously, like you said, nobody had really seen anything like that before, but it's something that's been copied a billion times since. So for this to be kind of the OG is really cool. And just that entire exorcism scene is crazy intense. I feel like I was like sweating the entire time, even though I'm like, they're probably gonna beat the devil. Like, I feel like that's the obvious conclusion here. But yeah, I think that scene specifically, Max von Sydow crushed it.
Yeah, I mean the ending is incredibly intense, especially because it's like each interaction with her like gets more and more crazy, and you're like, what is this building to? What is this building to? And then, like you said, we finally get Sydow showing up, and it's that cool, the old guy that he's been there before, like you said, and it's good to have him in that. And that's something that like this new movie, you would expect Ellen Burstyn to play that role and to kind of be doing that, but then she doesn't. And she kind of just gets sidelined for most of the movie. It's very strange. I love the character of Father Karras as well. I think his storyline is super cool. Anytime you've got the priest questioning his faith and then has to confront the devil. Like I think that's a really cool concept. Like how much will he be able to gather up his own will to stand up to the demons that both are infesting this young girl and him himself. Of course, you have the story of him losing his mother as well. And then the way things end for him also. I just enjoy his character. He's boxing around. He's super fun.
I completely agree. He is, I think, by far, he has the best kind of setup with the story wise, and I think he has the best arc. Him kind of dealing with his own demons in a sense before he even like the entire first act of the movie. He has nothing to do with the overall story.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, the movie's kind of about him.
Yeah, I mean,
more than anyone else.
We're exploring his horrors just in his real life of what he had to deal with his mom, and then kind of the repercussions of all that. And like you said too, he's questioning his faith, being a priest, which I think is interesting in any sort of media. And then I did want to
even the idea like he's a priest who's a psychiatrist, so it's like even more of just like he's not just dealing with the everyday like people confessing their sins, people putting their weight on, like he's dealing with the people who have live on the fringes of society, have intense mental illness and need help that especially in 73 maybe wasn't even be able to be provided to them, similar to his mother's situation.
And it's probably super topical as well at the time. That is a good point. I didn't think about that. I did want to fast forward to the end and talk about his overall arc. So spoiler alert, I mean, if we're at this point already, I guess, that's probably already established. But obviously at the end, he pretty much just sacrifices himself to kind of defeat this Zuzu character in a sense. I thought that was really kind of a fitting ending and a satisfactory ending. I mean, it's kind of like the entire time as well, obviously, like we said, he's questioning his faith. And then at the end, it's kind of like he finds his faith in a sense. And, Max von Sydow goes down, which I'll talk about later. And then he comes in and steps up. But I mean, he just baited this devil big time. I think this is one of the baddest moves we've ever seen in a movie here, to literally be like, hey, take me over, you won't. And then literally just ditch it out the window, or a staircase
down the stairs.
Yeah, so I thought that was a fun ending and like a good ending too. Even though it is happy, I was happy to see a happy ending in a movie this dark. So I like the direction there.
Well, when you see the image of him like sprawled out at the base, bleeding
Yeah.
out, and the father's reading him, what's his name? Father Dyer is reading him his last rites. It isn't necessarily happy, I'd say, but
Well, I mean, and then you get the very end where the same father's there and he's looking down the stairs and he's smiling and stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know. You can
he
take
gets
it
his
both ways.
he gets his Saint Joseph medal back, and it's all good.
Yeah.
Something that was also cool about this, and I've shouted this out with like Catch Me If You Can and some other ones that we've talked about. I love when movies love movies and make movies about movies and have those connections. And this is our main character, Chris, the mother here. She's an actress. They're making a movie here at Georgetown. So I just think that is like the subplot of this greater film is always just super fun. You've got the director character, Brooke Dennings, who is the first one to take a tumble down the stairs. So I just always want to shout that out and always love that in movies. Anytime you can kind of, hey, make what you know, right?
Yeah, true. It's easy to shoot. Yeah, I like the meta-ness. And that was a fun inclusion, that something I didn't expect at all. So I do back that too. I did have one last thing, but it's pretty random. Basically, obviously at the beginning of the film, kind of one of the first things that really scared me a little bit was when Ellen Burns, walks into the bedroom and the bed is shaking like crazy. I think that's a really cool practical effect. But also too, for some reason it reminds me of Grown Ups, talking about shaking the bed. So go check out our episode on Grown Ups. But I don't know why. I had to bring that up just because I thought of that.
Culture's just clashing, man. The 21st century and 20th century at the brink of fucking beauty right
Shaking the
there.
bed, man. That's our clip of the week.
How could you do that? That's my daughter! Do what? Shake the bed with her!
You think I would do that to you?
I mean, out of any of us, yeah, you'd be the one to do that.
I mean, you did sleep with Stimson's mother.
That's true.
I didn't even know that guy. He was your friend. I barely knew him. She grabbed my wiener. I told you guys. That's his daughter. It's different.
Me and him? Okay, maybe I flirted with him, but that was just to get your attention.
Well, what about his snoring?
I heard it too.
No, twice.
Bad, Kody. I don't know how I feel about the prologue at the beginning in Northern Iraq. I don't know if it's necessarily necessary to the total plot of the story. It does set up like the greater lore, and that's the thing. Like you don't even know any. I tell you Pazuzu, right? Like you don't know enough. If it's gonna do it, it needs to do more of it. And I do believe like the book and later iterations go more into that, and that's why people know about it. But either do more or do less. I don't know if we need a whole like 15-minute intro of this guy just in Iraq digging shit up.
Yeah, it just feels really out of place too. I was kind of talking about that structure wise.
And it doesn't feel super connected to the end. Like I know it does have a connection, and that's like the idea, like that statue is Pazuzu, and like that's supposed to be who's possessing her. And you see the like cross dissolve image of it, but like it doesn't feel like a connection that makes sense, or like why did that happen? How did it happen? It's a little unclear.
Seems kind of unnecessary, I would say, throughout the entire film together. I do like that, like Max von Sydow and this character have kind of been going at it for like a while. Like they're more mortal enemies in a sense, or maybe immortal, I guess, a little bit. So I like that they have history, but we don't like know what their history is. Like if that opening scene was maybe a little bit more exposition based, I guess, which I don't know if I've ever asked for that before. It would have connected more at the end when they're actually having like this face-to-face struggle after all these years. So yeah, I agree. I don't know why kind of that is the opening for this movie. It doesn't kind of make any sense to me.
What do you got for the bad?
I got a few things. First off, I don't know, and obviously this is more of just like it's a horror movie. So I like the concept of like medicine has failed these people so much that they have no other place to turn than to go to like the spiritual side. But kind of the way it portrays like doctors and medicine in general, it's like, oh, they're idiots. They don't know anything. Like just a waste of profession in a sense. So I think just like that ideological concept of like doctors are stupid. I don't love that, but I like the way it's used in this movie. And this will get pretty nitpicky as well. My next thing as well that I want to ask you about, because I probably just missed something, but again, it's with Max von Sydow and it's just not really explained. what's up with the pills? Because obviously he takes one at the beginning, and maybe that helps him like see who he's kind of dealing with in a sense. Maybe like you're saying, the spitting image come out a little bit when he takes the pills, and then at the very end he takes one again, and then he supposedly like dies off screen. But
I
obviously
think it's just supposed to be nitroglycerin, which is like heart medication, and then he has a
Okay.
heart attack at the end.
I
He's just an
mean,
old guy.
if people could just explain things, that would make my life easier, but it's a movie and they're not going to. But the thing along with that, I don't like the fake out death of Max von Sydow. You're gonna like kill this guy supposedly off camera. I think that's kind of lame. He like pops the pills and then he goes in and it's like, oh, he's dead. I don't like that. I feel like if we're gonna have a really kind of, important death, like a character like that, I want to see it. Like, this is an R-rated movie. Let me see him snap his neck or whatever the heck happened. I don't know how you kind of keep that off screen.
Well, especially it is weird because you feel like in a movie that would be released today, if that were to happen, like they'd be setting it up for him to come back as alive in the sequel or something like that. But that's not what happened. Like he is just dead, and it is kind of weird that you like it's just like, oh, okay, like this guy dies. I really don't like that part. And here's the thing: I loved this movie the first time I watched it. I thought it was incredible. I think it holds up so well from the 70s, like I said. However, second time around, I didn't love the ending as much. I think the Karis arc of him, committing suicide, it's good. It still feels a little unsatisfactory, especially when you combine it with the Marin heart attack. And you're like, well, I just want more explanation of like what was going on here. And I guess maybe I just need to go watch The Exorcist 2 to get that. But I will say I didn't love the ending as much the second time around.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I agree too. I think the Karis arc is awesome, but yeah, other than that, it's not the best. One other thing I wanted to mention here, bad, and again, it's pretty small, but earlier in the film, obviously, there's a lot of people who come and see Reagan and is like, is there really something wrong with her? I don't know. And there's one specific guy who is like almost begging like this devil character to come out, I guess. And he's like sitting right next to her the entire time. He's like, oh, am I speaking to the demon right now? Oh, why don't you come out and visit? And then he literally gets face to face with her. It's like, dude, like, what do you think's gonna happen? Obviously it's gonna grab you and like, tear you up. So I don't know. It's kind of just like one of those moments in Scream where you're like, dude, like run the other direction. Like, I don't know what you're doing right now, but it's clearly gonna go wrong. I feel like it's just a classic, horror trope in a sense. But again, this probably was the creator of that trope. So shout out to it, but still an idiot. I don't know what that guy's doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Also,
always that thing. It's like where you're sitting there and it's like, something as bad has happened. It's like you've seen it a million movies now. Probably in 1973, you're watching it and you're like, oh, I wonder what's gonna happen.
yeah, the quote in there too is great. It's the guy and then it's the other person. And they yell, Harold. So you might have to clip that too because that's a great line. But yeah, I don't know what Harold's doing, but he got way too close.
Let's move on to the ugly. I want to start. There's a ton of ugly stuff, but I wanted to bring up something interesting, Kody. Did you know that this movie allegedly had a cursed production?
I did not know that. What does that mean?
So there's a lot to unpack here, and I will admit this is wonderful Wikipedia research. So this has been disputed. Some people say, it was Warner Brothers and William Friedkin kind of like going out of their way to, kind of similar to like the Blair Witch Project. You fudge the story a little bit to make it seem scarier. However, here's the alleged things that happened. An 85-day shoot turned into a 200-day shoot. They went a couple $1 million over budget, which of course in modern money would be like, a couple tens of $1 million over budget. At one point, a bird flew into a circuit breaker and caused a fire, burning up most of the sets outside of other than Reagan's room, which caused a 6-week delay. The big Pazuzu statue that we talked about that is in the opening of the film, instead of getting shipped to Iraq where they filmed it, it was shipped to Hong Kong, which caused a 2-week delay of just like trying to get it to be in the right place. There was a lot of people, cast and crew alike, who were injured in the filming of this movie, including Ellen Burstyn and Linda Blair, both. Ellen Burstyn in the scene where Reagan throws Chris, her mom, across the room and she like falls. In that scene, when they were filming it, she actually fell and broke her coccyx. And the take they use in the film is the one where she falls and breaks her tailbone, which is just insane. Reagan ended up having like scoliosis as a result of some of the different movements and the like her being strapped down. and some other long-term health effects. There was different injuries. A carpenter cut his thumb off, a lighting technician lost a toe, like all this different stuff. And then also like all these stories of like family of the crew that like died, whether it be the guy who plays Dennings, McGowan, died a week after he finished filming. Another crew cast member died. Linda Blair's grandfather died the first week of production. Seidal's brother died after his first day of shooting, and he had to go back to Sweden. Just like all of this crazy stuff was happening. Friedkin was quoted as saying, "I'm not a covert to the occult," he told the horror film magazine Castle of Frankenstein, "but after all I've seen on this film, I definitely believe in demonic possession. We were plagued by strange and sinister things from the beginning." He asked Father Birmingham, who was the film's technical advisor, to perform an exorcism on the set. Birmingham decided to just bless the casting crew. British film historian Sarah Crothers kind of like said that a lot of this, like I said, was Warner Brothers or Friedkin, kind of doing a similar William Castle, Blair Witch Project, that type of, extreme marketing type thing. But I don't know. It's crazy if even some of this stuff is true. Maybe there truly was a demon at work.
Hopefully not, but I mean, just the injuries alone is kind of weird. I don't know about like people losing toes and thumbs. That kind of doesn't mean out, but and Bernstein stuff, that's insane. Scoliosis is no fun. Also, UPS probably just didn't do their job, so I don't know if that's a curse or anything, but yeah, a lot of negatives surrounding the movie, I guess, which, like you said, is not the worst thing for marketing, but
luckily it made plenty of money in theaters, so I'm sure it was fine.
Field a sequel at least, so that's what we got.
What do you got for the ugly?
I don't have any purses to talk about, unfortunately. Most of my stuff is obviously just surrendered around this Zuzu character, taking over possession of this girl. I mean, the one that stands out to me, again, like this is like an R-rated category, so whatever. I don't really care, but
this is an R-rated podcast, some might say, Kody.
Well, I'd say this episode is just because we're dealing with some dark shit. But the first one that stands out is obvious, but
the crucifix masturbation.
Yeah,
we'll say.
Got a cross, and yeah, it's getting bloody. I don't love that scene. Pretty gross. Couple puke like jump scares, which I think is funny, but also still gross.
I've said it many times on the podcast. I'm not a fan of use of puke in things. I would say the particular like pea green puke that they, the pea soup puke that they use in this is especially gross, but also like I'm almost more okay with it because it's like seems so viscerally fake in a certain way. And it's like, this is demon puke. Regular people would never produce some things like that. I will say that the scene where she pukes it onto the guy's face, it was just supposed to go all over his shirt. And because of a malfunction with like the squirting mechanism, it hit him in the face, and I think he was legit pissed off about that happening. But the real reaction there from Seidal.
Had to wipe off his glasses. He looked pissed. So that is a good take, though. So they probably did it on purpose. They just didn't tell him. Other than that, a couple other just gross things. She like scratches on her stomach, like, help me. That's just brutal. I feel like doing that to yourself just because you're under kind of possession from this demonic force. I feel like that's one of the scariest things in the film almost, is kind of Reagan has no control over this, and she's just kind of along for the ride. And I feel like just putting yourself in her kind of spot in this movie is obviously the scariest, but I think just that reminder of she's still in there and she's kind of seeing everything is pretty terrifying.
Yeah, they did that with like a silicone fake belly where they had it scratched in and then used like heat to remove it and reversed the shot to make it look like it was appearing, which is pretty cool. There's a callback to that in the new Exorcist Believer, some help me scratched into the girls' bodies.
Nice. Love me some legacy sequels. So we always gotta do the same thing. But again, the practical effects are crazy. So shout out again to that team.
Just mentioning them here in the ugly, I mean, that speaks to the strength of them.
Yeah. And then the last thing I had, and it kind of goes hand in hand with Karras's arc at the end. Obviously, like I said, hell of a bait and switch from the guy, but he did land a few punches on a little girl, so that's pretty tough.
A demon-possessed little girl.
Yeah, so I don't think she qualifies for the fight category coming up, since she already got, decked a couple of times.
By a boxer. Well, mind you, this guy, we saw he could throw some punches early in the film.
He's running on the track too. This guy's in shape. But,
He's full. I mean, he basically is like, he kind of looks like a less, or maybe a better looking Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, that's and a better actor as well. Sean Sly. Yeah, I mean, punching a little girl, even though obviously it's not real, and I'm sure that was another one of the puppets there. Still pretty tough, I would say.
The only little like body horror thing that we have not talked about, and this goes back to your Dr. Suck thing, the very realistic, and I want to get this right, it's a cerebral angiography, which is they go into her artery in her neck and the blood's like shooting out, and they take the images of her brain and the vessels. Super visceral, very like super accurate representation of how that procedure would actually be done. And it's crazy because it's like played for this intense horror, but the only thing that's happening is just like a real medical procedure. And I know a lot of people had extreme like physical reactions to the movie as a whole, but especially to that scene is heavily identified as one that people always struggle to watch.
That is difficult to watch. I mean, especially since it's kind of the little girl being the one performed on. And maybe I don't know this either, but was there no like, drugs back in the 70s where you could like sedate people to do this? Or because I feel like if you do that today and they like poke,
well, I don't know. It's also like as they're looking at the brain, like a lot of times, sometimes you got to be awake for that kind of stuff to get the imaging right. And
yeah, it's a good point. But I feel like if that was me, that'd be severely traumatizing, and I would never want to go to a doctor again. So yeah, I don't know. It is very like you said, it fits the horror theme of the entire movie, because even when they like turn off the lights and you can just like focus on her face, I think that's one of the scariest scenes in the movie. Yeah.
All right, Kody, let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. And we're back with Invite, Fight, Night.
Totally invite your personal friend, Spider-Man.
I want to fight you, Hans. Bobby, I'm your white knight.
Kody, who do you want to invite on the pod?
And again, I mean, there's not a ton of characters here to choose from. So invite, I went pretty obvious. I want the old man. I want Max von Sydow here. We've talked about it already. I mean,
Father Marin.
Father Marin. I like that too when he shows up at the house and the devil's like, Marin! Like they're old boys. But yeah, I mean, I'm guessing too, like they probably went, like you said, I guess they obviously did, but they went more into the sequels on the history of kind of their relationship and the backstory of both of these characters. But like I said too, it seems to just be like a never-ending struggle between these two. So I feel like having him on, he would have tons of crazy stories, I'm sure. Obviously, what happened in Iraq, we don't even know that really. That would be a good starting point to, I think, just like a lifelong battle between this demon and Marin. So I think he'd be a great guest.
He was also my first pick as well. I back everything he said. I have done some research in the time since we first started this podcast. In the sequel of The Exorcist, Father Marin is featured in flashbacks where he, during the Second World War, performed an exorcism in Africa where he went up against our good buddy Pazuzu.
They mentioned
that is what we see kind of happening in this film. We see flashbacks of him.
Cool.
Also, the character is played by Stellan Skarsgård in the 2004 film Exorcist: The Beginning, which is a prequel. And then there's another prequel, Dominion, prequel to The Exorcist. Yeah, man.
Those Jurassic World
stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Stellan Skarsgård, though, dude. Lancaster Marin. I like it.
My most underrated actor. Yeah, I think that's a great prequel recast. Definitely better than any recast I'll bring to the table today, but I might have checked that one out. I do like Stellan.
My other invite, I'll throw out there. You might be opposed, but a good friend of ours, Captain Howdy. Could we have him on the podcast?
That was my thought too. Like Captain Howdy and Zazu, they got to be the same person here, right?
I think so. I think, friends call him Captain Howdy. His enemies call him Pazuzu, maybe. One of those things.
That should have been the title, honestly, instead of The Exorcist. Captain Howdy. I think that fits better.
That'll be our sequel. Exorcist Captain Howdy. Fight, Kody. Who do you want to fight?
Yeah, my fight here. I mean, again, you can go after the demons and stuff. I stay away from that. I'm going to go after a couple of side characters who we haven't talked about a lot. The first one was that director character you were talking about, Burke. And I may have misheard you earlier, but did you say he died like shortly after filming? Is that what you said?
Was he what? Yeah, he did. Jack McGowan. Yeah, passed
Man,
away.
that's crazy. Well, obviously, rest in peace to that actor. I don't know, that is weird. I feel like that specifically makes me kind of wheezy about maybe there is a curse on this altogether.
Well, let's hope he didn't
But
fall
just
down any stairs. That's for sure.
yeah, very true. But I was gonna say, just like talking about his character specifically here, he's kind of just like a drunk asshole the entire movie, and he's kind of just like this stuck-up director. So I feel like he's asking for one. But like you said, I mean, he goes out in a pretty tough way. So I decided to stay away from him with the end all be all. I end up going instead for the cop character, who I feel like is kind of just useless in this movie. I don't really know if he needs to be there. He doesn't bring anything other than maybe like one scene of tension with Ellen Bernstein of like he knows what's going on and he just kind of doesn't say it a little bit. And he's kind of a driver behind the scenes, I guess, with Karis as well. But I don't know, he's just annoying and I kind of want to punch him in the face. So I brought him here.
William F. Kinderman is his character, and he is also the person I'm picking to fight. Maybe we should have mentioned him in the bad because really his character's only purpose, like you said, is to basically just bring to the audience the idea that this guy fell out of the window. Like, if it's not for him, we wouldn't know that Reagan killed Burke. Like, that's what his purpose is, to like kind of set that up. Also, I hate the whole thing where he's like, "Oh, could I get an autograph for my daughter?" And then he's like, it's for me." Like, he's being super weird with Chris's character, and yeah, I just don't like it. It's like, come on, man, somebody died.
Yeah, it's like a subplot of he's like a super fan of Ellen
Yeah.
Burst, actress in real life. Like maybe that was interesting if like he goes a darker route and is like a stalker or something at the end, but he's just like a good-hearted cop who's a loser. So yeah, it's kind of just not interesting.
All right, Knight. I feel like we might go 3 for 3 here, Cody. But who do you want tonight?
You can kick us off because I 100% have the same answer.
Father Karras is going to be my knight here. Obviously, this guy. I mean, he literally kills himself to save this girl from a demon, which I think is probably the most noble of all things. He gets the possession and then jumps out the window, takes a tumble.
Good guy, and this is I think this has got to be a cap first. I don't think we've ever agreed on the invite fight night, so shout out to that. But yeah, I mean, Karras I think is the true hero of this story. Obviously, like I said before, he's fighting demons even before he kind of came into the fray here, and then just like makes the ultimate sacrifice to kind of take down this demon. So yeah, kind of just an unbelievable guy and a really cool arc, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Cody, the recast.
Bond. James Bond. My name's Bond. James Bond.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
Before we do our picks, I wanted to just throw out, as I do sometimes, some thought potential castings at the time.
I did see one. Al Pacino, I believe, they tried to cast him. Maybe he was about to. I don't know, but I did see that. I think that would be a really cool fit. But go ahead.
Al Pacino, definitely a name. Warner Brothers wanted Brando to play Father Merrin a lot, but Friedkin said no, because this will become a Marlon Brando movie, which like I do kind of agree with. It would probably be too much. But I mean, Marlon Brando, he's a fantastic actor. I'm sure he would have killed it.
Yeah, he'd be good, but he would be the one to be like, nah, let's rewrite the script. Like, I got to be in the entire movie.
I need to be in it more. I don't think Marlon Brando's there for 10 minutes in Iraq and then, 15 at the end to have a heart attack. Jack Nicholson turned down the role of Father Karras, which I think we're better off with him not being Father Karras, to be entirely honest. I don't know. I wouldn't love that.
Dude, I don't know. Jack Nicholson is a hell of an actor. I think the guy who eventually got cast, I don't remember his name. It's
Jason Miller.
Jason Miller. I don't think we have said that once. Shout out to Jason Miller. Great performance. He does look like Sylvester Stallone. But I would have loved to see Jack Nicholson instead. I think Jack Nicholson's awesome. So I would have been on board for that too.
He does reappear in The Exorcist 3, Cody.
I saw that, but I think it's a different character according to his IMDb. It was like patient. He was a patient or something. So
I think that movie's pretty wacky from what I understand. And then also Paul Newman was allegedly interested in playing the role as well, but that didn't turn out. And then I've got 3 names here, people that all rejected the role of Chris. Big hot shots: Audrey Hepburn, Anne Bancroft, Jane Fonda.
Wow. Yeah, pretty big wigs back there in the 70s as well. So, I mean, Ellen Burstyn is obviously a great actor. I'm not surprised they kind of went all out with the casting here because people probably saw the script and were pretty interested. But yeah, I think Ellen Burns was great. But
I think Jane Fonda could. I think maybe her career would be a little bit differently if she was in a role like this, but I would like to see it.
I mean, I would have loved to see Audrey Hepburn in this as well. I think both of them specifically are awesome actresses. So yeah, that is a good short list to have in any movie.
What's your first real recast, Kody?
For this, it's tough. I mean, like I said, it's a really small cast. I'm not familiar with a lot of the niche actors in the 70s, so I kind of went all around here. But first off, I wanted to get rid of the detective, the cop character, whatever. Just because I think somebody else could have added a little bit more to it. And my thought here was, I don't know how old Steve Martin was in the 70s, but let's give him a shot with this character, I think. And we're doing the whole time traveling thing this week as well, where I'm just, picking them up out of a certain era and throwing them in 1973. But I think like Steve Martin giving me like Pink Panther vibes would give a little bit like comedic relief to this movie. Just because if that character's not going to do anything, let's at least like make him outlandish and
yeah, I think he's supposed to be kind of funny, but
yeah, probably. I mean, that is kind of like ironic humor of him talking about like give me a signature for his daughter, and then it's for him. So I think go even more that direction and give me a crazy mustached Steve Martin. I think that'd be really fun.
I back it. My pick here. This is he's just a fantastic actor. Robert De Niro. He's on the mind. He can play Father Karras. Obviously, he's done kind of like the boxer thing before. He's done the priest thing before. Give me a troubled man struggling with his faith. Robert De Niro. 70s. He's in his prime. I can see it.
Oh yeah, I think that's a great pick. Obviously, pretty obvious if I say so myself. But I mean, you could put Bobby D in any movie, and he's going to be great. Along with that, I did want to recast Karras just for the kicks of it as well. I went another direction, but another very well-respected actor. How about Daniel Day-Lewis in this role? I think that would be intense as hell, and maybe it wouldn't be as emotional, but I would probably be as scared of him as I was of like the devil character. So I think he could bring a different of like level of intensity to the movie that I think would be fun.
What era of DDL?
I mean, prime DDL. You can go, There Will Be Blood. You can go Lincoln.
2000s, like 2000s ish. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like late 2000s. Yeah.
That makes sense, I think, age-wise. And then my last thing, this is not for this movie. This is for The Exorcist Believer and any subsequent Exorcist sequels. David Gordon Green, of course, the director of that. And, he did the Halloween trilogy we've talked about. I think they should drop him. They should be done with him. Let's bring in a new director. I want Scott Derrickson to be the guy that they hand the Exorcist keys to. I know you might look at me a little strange. Listen, he's already lived in the world of IP plenty, so I'm okay with sticking him with some more. He's done a lot of great horror films. I really like The Black Phone. I think Sinister's pretty solid. And he also can do, big budget, high level CGI, trusted stuff. He did the first Doctor Strange movie. I think let's give him a big budget for a horror movie that'll actually get some eyes on it. Because here's the thing, Exorcist Believer, despite being shitty, people still went to go see it. Let's have good filmmakers at least involved.
I agree. And I like definitely keeping him in the horror genre compared to the superhero big budget. Well, he also got dropped, I believe, pretty late in the process of Doctor Strange 2 because they wouldn't let him do the horror stuff that he wanted to.
But then they brought in Sam Raimi and they did do it, but then he didn't really. That's such a stupid.
Sam Raimi's horror, I think, is different than other people's horror, to be fair. Nothing against Sam Raimi, but yeah, I haven't seen some of Derrickson's other smaller horror stuff, but I back it. I mean, give the guy more opportunities. I feel like that happens a lot where people start off small and then they go big budget and they kind of fail there and they kind of don't get another opportunity after that, which I don't like at all. Kind of similar with like Colin Trevorrow, although he had the Book of Henry.
He does not deserve another shot.
But I'm just saying, like, if you
he's had plenty of chances.
If you make that big jump, I think even if you fail at that big jump, you should have another chance to come back.
Unless you're Colin Trevorrow.
Yeah, the Book of Henry isn't a fair, but yeah.
The rating, Kody, out of 69.
But do you like me?
What do you want to rate this movie?
I mean, this is a really good movie. It's hard to place here. Again, I think it's somewhere in the middle of kind of all the jumbled 4 stars for me. I do have some issues with it. It's, not my favorite movie of all time, but like we said, for 50 years old, the fact that this even stands up, I think is very impressive. I'm going to go a 62 out of 69. I think that's fair. I think that's right on the border of like 4-star and 4.5. And I think that's where this is landing for me.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that math entirely, but your rating system is your rating system, Kody. I'm
5 stars would be like 67, 68, 69. Yeah, after that, who knows? But
yeah, it's very top heavy. It's very tight at the top. I'm gonna give this movie a 60 out of 69. So of course we're both very high on this one. For me, it's a 4.5-star movie. I really love it. I think it's like I said, one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Probably one of my favorite 70s movies of all time. Really holds up. And if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out.
Yeah. And I think it probably would make my horror movie Mount Rushmore at this current stage of time. So yeah, definitely deserving of one of the most iconic and one of the best horrors of all time, I think. Yeah.
Let's move on to You Might Also Like.
Who knows? You might like it. It's a killer rush.
If you like The Exorcist, Kody, what would you suggest people check out next?
Yeah, I got a couple suggestions. First off, I mean, check out our Insidious and our Conjuring episode. Like I said, I feel like this movie is pretty influential for those two. So I feel like going back and listening to those episodes would be even more interesting in hindsight. Past that, a couple just like movie suggestions. And they're both a little off kilter, of course, coming from me. But the first one would just be the original Alien film, which I think it's just scary. Like, it's just plain up scary. So I think if this movie scares you and you kind of like that, and maybe you want to go a little bit more sci-fi with your horror instead of, the religious angle, I think Alien would be a really good one. My other rec is it's horror based. Cabin in the Woods is one of my probably favorite horror movies, really. But obviously it's more of like
Mount Rushmore.
It's close. It's probably in the top 10. I don't know about Mount Rushmore, but obviously the madness, and it's more of really a comedy at heart. But it kind of plays on a lot of horror movie tropes, similar to like a Scream movie, but more in the modern age. Yeah, I think that's just kind of a fun off kilter rec. If you really enjoy like horror, like The Exorcist, I think you'll have kind of a side that you'll enjoy in Cabin in the Woods as well.
I second, especially The Conjuring. I think that's a very similar lane of horror, like you said. And then you can just listen to our episode. And then I'll throw out again Scott Derrickson, the Sinister. If you haven't seen that, another Ethan Hawke. It's not as much demonic possession, but it is this idea of like it's a family story at its core. It's about a dad and his kids, and maybe his kids who are gonna murder him.
Seems to be a lot of family dynamics in horror.
Horror is about society at its core, and
about family. Give me a Fast and Furious horror spinoff. That'd be dope.
Hey man, monster cars. They're chasing you. The final question.
All right, listen, I got one last question for you.
What's your final question?
I have a really deep one for you today. And it really doesn't have too much to do with this movie in particular. But my final question to you is, in Hollywood, if no sequels were ever made from the beginning of existence, would Hollywood be for the better or would it be for the worse?
Ooh, I think it would be for the worse, because I just don't think it would be as successful. Like we talked about, like things have impact. Like making a sequel makes the original more popular, and like the fact that this had a second and a third movie and it went on, and like the continued cultural significance of something just continues to build on its legacy and its original existence. Like if Star Wars only made 3 movies from 1978 to 1983 or whatever, and then they never did the prequels and they never did the Disney versions, yes, it would still be beloved, but it would not be remembered in the same way. Like it is the fact that things are continually iterated upon and reintroduced to new generations, that things are able to stand the test of time and be as prevalent. I think we would still have a great, cinema world, and we have a lot of new and original stories being told, but I don't think any single thing could break through and be as impactful as some of the ideas have become today. Now, of course, due to capitalism and this idea of fucking content farming and film and TV isn't even film and TV, it's content. Like our society is fucking depreciated. But I don't think that's because of sequels. I think that's because of greed and corporate, fucking interests at heart, and we live in a debt society.
I'm glad I could get you riled up at least, but I do agree. I think just like the concept of taking away sequels, it would really just change like what Hollywood is in a sense. 'Cause you wouldn't have those big franchises. There probably wouldn't be that much money involved, I don't think, in a lot of these
also it's
projects.
like it's not like Hollywood invented sequels. Like books have had sequels.
Yeah.
The Old Testament is the greatest sequel to the New Testament is the classic sequel to the
I
Old
was gonna
Testament.
say,
I mean,
the Old
it's always been
Testament.
around.
I missed the original.
Sorry, it's the prequel to the New Testament. Is that better?
Yeah, it is the prequel, so it's a lot worse.
They did the reboot with the Quran.
Yeah, true. A lot of reboots recently. But I don't know. I think, like personally, I think I rather would live in a world with no sequels, just because I think conceptually that would really push kind of like Hollywood and filmmakers to a different level. Obviously, you wouldn't even have like The Empire Strikes Back or like a lot of or The Godfather Part 2, like a lot of great movies. But I think it would kind of just be a completely different landscape that I would at least be interested to see kind of what would be being made today.
It is interesting because for a long time, like there's historically first movie makes enough money, it's going to get a sequel, but the sequel would never make as much money as the first movie or even be as successful. And that's like a much more modern movie revolution. It's like you can make sequels and it'll actually be better for the franchise.
Yeah, I feel like that's very common today. Of
I think
you like double the budget from the original, and you're like,
yeah. I mean, we talked when I was
too.
going back and watching all those Planet of the Apes movies. One of the first franchises that really hit in the 60s and 70s. That by the time they were on the fifth movie, the budget was like a fifth of the first one, and they're like using old ape suits from parties down the road. Like not even it's ridiculous, man. My question for you, Kody: do you believe that this could happen?
Oh, okay. Are we going really like
also getting deep for you?
Philosophical here.
Are exorcisms real? Is demonic possession a thing that you believe in? And the demons are listening.
Well, we don't know that. This movie's
might
cursed.
Be testing yourself.
Yeah, I don't want to say anything too bad. I think it is possible. I think it's hard to rule out really anything isn't possible in today's world. And I think I would probably have the perspective of like Karras's character if I did kind of run along something like this of like, who the hell knows anything about this? Like, this is unprecedented. No one else in the world has ever dealt with this. I think that would be my perspective, but I don't think I can rule out like this won't happen, because the minute I say that, Zazu is probably jumping in my body tonight and ending it all. So I'm scared of that. But no, I really do think like this is something that could happen. I would be utterly shocked, but it's hard to rule out, I would say.
The thing, like even the stuff that is like supernatural and fantastical, it does seem kind of grounded. Like there's nothing that like jumps the shark, quote unquote, of like, oh, well, okay, this is completely beyond reality. Like even her turning her head, it's like, oh, this is pretty creepy, but I don't know, owls can do it. Why not people?
He does jump out the window. Doesn't really jump the shark, I guess.
That's true. He jumps the stairs. 3-movie mini draft.
Well, it is draft day.
This week we're doing something a little bit different here, and it's just movies that have priests in them. We're leaving that up to whatever we could find. Kody, you get the first pick.
Oh, I get the first pick. Let's go. I tried to do like some deep dive research with this, but it's like hard to research.
Yeah.
I wasn't getting what I was looking for. So I kind of had to just go in my mind and really dig deep. My first pick, and I think this is a completely obvious pick, I'm going to go Spotlight. I think obviously a movie that includes priests, this is probably one of the worst ways that they are included, obviously, but I think it's one of the best movies made where they're just, a character of some sort. Obviously just the ensemble cast is ridiculous. And I mean, best picture winner, that stands for itself. But yeah, one of the modern classics, I think, and I'm glad to have it on my team here.
That definitely hurts me. That was at the top of my list. It's one of my favorite movies, and definitely a bad look for priests. I will throw out The Conjuring as my first pick. We've talked about it already. There are some priests that show up in that and to do some exorcising of their own. And in terms of a modern horror classic, I think it really holds up. I also have another pick here, which I don't know if we've done a draft where this movie hasn't gotten picked at this point this season.
Is it
Maybe
your pick? I thought we go back and forth.
Oh yeah, I guess we do go back and forth, Cody. What do you want? What's your pick?
I'm not gonna let you have this movie. Are you crazy? You gotta use this on your first pick, bud. I'm thinking Lady Bird. I think the priest is one of the most memorable characters as well, just because. Well, of course, I mean he is from Indiana, I believe, right? Where's he from?
Yeah, well, he went to master's degree from Purdue, MFA.
There we go. Yeah, so we like that guy.
Stephen McGinley of Dune.
He's ridiculously good in that film. Kind of really like the emotional touchstone, I think, of the entire thing. Yeah, obviously I'm taking Lady Bird. I've taken it like 3 other times in these drafts, so we stay not letting you pick it. But yeah, I'm very excited. I got Spotlight and Lady Bird. I think this is a clean sweep already.
All right. Well, I'm a little annoyed. I'll throw out here the Banshees of Inisherin. Yeah. Well, I want it. I'll take the Banshees of Inisherin. There is a confessional scene in which Brendan Gleeson's character goes to confession. And of course, that was kind of my route of trying to like look this up. I was like movies with confessional scenes. And I was like, oh yeah, Banshees. That's a good one. I really enjoy that movie. So yeah, that's my second pick. So screw you, Cody.
That's a great pick. That was not on my short list. I was trying to think of that as well, but all I could think of was like the Daredevil TV show, because it's riddled with like confessionals like that. For my last pick, I can go a lot of directions. I do have some honorable mentions that are really fun, but I think I will just take There Will Be Blood and call this movie draft a wraps, because I just whooped your ass. But obviously Paul Dano is kind of the main religious figure there. And according to you, he's even better than Daniel Day-Lewis. So I don't think I can go against your words. So that'll be my third pick here.
What's the fucking quote? What's he say?
I've abandoned my child. I've abandoned my boy.
Hey, Killers of the Flower Moon, talk about There Will Be Blood, am I right? For my third pick, I am going to take a little film called A League of Their Own, because there is also a confessional scene in that. Nice. And we've talked about it in baseball movies. It's not my favorite by any means, but I think it is an extremely important movie, and it's a classic from the 90s. Terrible Tom Hanks as a person, just bad guy. But we love Madonna.
I like that. Yeah, I forgot there was a priest in that one as well, but I like that pick. It's definitely off my radar though.
I was trying to do some last minute baptism scene Googling. If there's an iconic Godfather one, I could have used that, but it's okay.
Interesting. I did have a couple honorable mentions I wanted to throw out. First off, Prince of Egypt. Shout out to, again, Steve Martin Short. Fun comedic duo that they play some priests. And then, actually, I think that's in, I take it back. I'm thinking of the wrong Disney movie. But I think there's probably a priest in the Prince of Egypt. There's got to be, right? I mean, it's about Jesus. I'm thinking of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. That's where they play the priest at. So I apologize. Keep that in. My other one that I wanted to shout out, though, is the Sister Act franchise.
I don't think the Prince of Egypt is about Jesus necessarily. I think it's about the Old Testament. Again, it's the prequel to Jesus.
Yeah, you got me there. I don't really know. And if I'll be honest, I don't really care. But anyway.
But hey, man, you should watch your movies so you don't get fucking possessed by Pazuzu.
Let's talk about the Sister Act franchise, Korbin. Have you seen any of these movies, Sister Act?
Sorry, Whoopi, but no, I haven't.
Sad. Well, for some reason in my household, Sister Act 2 was a movie that we frequently watched. So I do enjoy that movie a good amount. It is Whoopi pretty much just playing Whoopi, which I'm fine with. But it's got like a cool, student teacher dynamic where she's like the choir teacher and they go on to like the state finals. And it's obviously like this really bad neighborhood that she's teaching in. Kind of just like a fun, coming of age story. So I guess if you haven't seen Sister Act 2, I wouldn't really recommend it. But I'd recommend it for you, Korbin, because I think you actually might like it a little bit. Sister Act 1, I don't really like that one, if I'm being honest. But the second one, it takes a more fun direction, I think.
All right, I'll give it a shot maybe. Some ones that I was identifying: Silence, which is another Scorsese movie, obviously features three monks. Basically, any movie in the Conjuring franchise, you can probably get around to it, whether it's The Nun or Annabelle or blah blah blah. The Pope's Exorcist, that's a movie that came out this year. Velocipaster, Kody, everybody's favorite. Weekly watches, Kody.
Karen, honey, what are you watching?
What are we watching? What are you into? I've mentioned Exorcist Believer. Decent first hour, bad second hour. You know how this movie ends. You know that this Exorcist Believer similarly cannot end necessarily happily, and it does not. David Gordon Green, move on, do your own thing, stop killing 70s horror. What have you been into, Kody?
I've been into a ton recently. First off, I did check out The Imitation Game, which is on my list for a while and just one I wanted to watch for some reason. I saw like a couple of probably the best scenes on TikTok, and I was like, hey, I should check that out. And after I watched the movie, I was like, oh, those are probably the two best scenes on TikTok. So a little
the way it was
underwhelming.
intended.
Yeah, exactly. But I did like it. I think like historically it is really interesting and a story I really did not know anything about. So I think that's pretty sad that, and obviously it's kind of kept secret for a very long time. But Cumberbatch is great. The entire cast, like the acting wise, Keira Knightley too, is really, really good. So yeah, good historical drama, I think. And then the other thing, obviously, we both went and saw Killers of the Flower Moon here. It was just released this past weekend. I did not check it out on opening weekend. Actually, I checked it out on the Monday after opening weekend because I typically have like half days at work. So I got off at like 2 p.m. I was like, hey, what should I do with the rest of my day? Oh, let's go watch Killer of the Flower Moons for 4.5 hours. So that was good. Obviously, I mean, Scorsese is Scorsese. I don't know if he even really makes bad movies, if he has that ability. I haven't seen it yet, but this is a good movie. Obviously, it being like a real crime historical drama, I don't know if that's really his kind of niche, like his best work, I guess, in a sense, or even like the best concept for him, just because obviously he's going to center the story around Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio. And with this being like a true crime thing about, the brutal murders of these Osage people, I think probably it should have just been focused on, their perspective a lot more, which I mean, again, it's hard to do when you have Leo and De Niro. Like, I don't blame it at all.
Well, and when you are Martin Scorsese, because it's a hard thing for a guy like him to make. But this is the movie that he's capable of making, and it's from the perspective of him. And I think this is a movie that's very heavily about white supremacy, and similar to, I want to shout out like Midsummer, which is a movie that he has directly talked about having, an influence on like the act structure of this movie. And he really loves Ari Aster. I want to say in terms of just like this idea of like living in a society where you're like complicit to the crimes of the people around you, very similar ideas to those that what's happening to the cult in Midsummer. So I think the connection there is heavily apparent, and just every scene of like, it's not just one person or two people that were doing this. It was every single white person, whether they were directly involved or indirectly involved. They were conspiring to kill and take the money of these native people. And I think it captures that, and it tells that story very plainly, which is the story of America.
Well said. And white people will definitely mofo suck in this movie. Leo's character specifically, I do have issues with, but I think it's cool that like Scorsese, this was like a passion project of his as well, something he's wanted to do for a long time. So I think he genuinely does care like about the story and about kind of like I don't know anything about like the kind of the severity of the situation with the Osage people. It's absolutely ridiculous. There's a lot of shocking stuff in this movie. I think it is really good. Like I said, the acting, the directing, the score is amazing. It is long as balls, which is fine.
I've seen it twice. I can attest to that. It is long.
And if you haven't seen it, I would recommend going and seeing it in theaters. It is really good. I don't think
first time both of us have seen a Scorsese movie in a theater, which is kind of crazy.
That is insane. And he's made a ton of movies. So it's funny that this is the first one. Yeah, I think this was a pretty good movie from Scorsese. Definitely recommend.
Definitely not his, best, but even when you're in the second or third tier of his work, it is still better than the majority of stuff that's coming out.
It's hard to continuously beat yourself when you've made such good movies over and over, but it's still really good. But other than that, Survivor's going on. Did you check out the list that Corbino? I'll tell you what, I'm obviously not going to spoil it.
I'm in a bad place after what happened in the previous episode.
Yeah, I guess we can talk about episode 4, 100%. I mean, another quit. CBS casting. I mean, look right here. This is all you need. Nobody's going to quit the game.
We won't quit.
Like, that's the only thing you need to make sure is like, okay, if I starve you for like a year, are you going to quit Survivor? They say yes. Don't let them on the show. It's that simple. I don't know, but that's really annoying. And also, like, what was the guy's name? I don't even remember now.
Sean?
Yeah, Sean. Also, Sean was in a good spot. Like, he was not going to get voted out. So it just, from a game perspective and from like a fan perspective, it's a double of just like, what the fuck, and it doesn't make sense. So yeah, that really irks me. And I mean, I don't know. I could spoil something, but it's not really a spoiler.
The one thing I'll say is like, I'm glad that they did the vote because I like that it sowed some seeds of doubt potentially within their tribe. So I like that.
Yeah. And the merge is upcoming pretty quickly here. So it'll get interesting. But yeah. Corbin will have to catch up. What were your weekly watches though?
I was really just Believer in Killer's Farm, and I've not been watching much, so I got nothing.
Nice. And you saw Killers twice already too? That's pretty impressive.
I did go see Killer's Flower Moon for a second time last night with former guest Chris McGovern. And it's weird because in the days following seeing it, I had felt like I only continued to like it more and more as I thought about it, I read about it, and I just began to consider it. But then when I sat down for a second watch, I was like, oh no, I still feel like listen, it's still in like, I think it's at like 5 for me for the year of like in terms of my favorite movies, and I'm leaving it there. But it's that weird thing of like, well, I started to like it more when I think about like what it means, but then also just like sitting down to watch it for a second time and like really feeling the length more on the second watch and thinking, there are probably some things you could parse back. And I hold the same reservation that you mentioned of like, Leo, like it is very much a story about Molly and their characters, Ernest and Molly together. But I almost like, I don't know. We don't need Leo. Like, do we need the compassion? Do we need the centering on him? Like it is a little strange. And I agree. I don't know. Again, Scorsese, this is the way he needs to tell the story because it's the only way that he's honestly capable of telling it. And an Osage or a native person would probably never ever get $200 million to tell a story like this. So I think it's at least powerful that he's able to use his platform to spread this message. And I think it's also important that this is not a white savior movie. It's a fucking white betrayal movie. If anything, it's a movie about how these people, again, went into this community, loved them, had babies with them, married them, and then stabbed them in the back and murdered them and plundered them for everything they had, as we have done over, the last 200 years of this country existing.
Again, white people, goddamn, just terrible. The performances in this movie are crazy though. I think De Niro's got a really good shot. I thought really RDJ had best supporting actor in the bag, but I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up now. And then best actress, I think, has almost been, everybody's tossed aside a little bit after this movie's come out now. So obviously still a lot of stuff to come out, but yeah, I think this movie will be awards heavy. I think Scorsese will get a nom for director as well. Leo probably for actor just because it's Leo, but he won't win. But yeah, I think a lot of noms are definitely incoming.
There's a part of me that wants to make the prediction that Lily Gladstone will be the only winner from this movie. But I think it could sneak a couple technicals. I think the costuming is really incredible. Like you mentioned, the score is pretty solid. Robbie Robertson passed away like after completing the score. He's longtime collaborator, Scorsese, singer of the band. So like there might be that. Film Schoonmaker, his longtime collaborator, has edited every single one of his movies since I think Raging Bull, has won multiple Oscars. Awesome. I don't know, but it also seems like a movie that will be 10, 12 nominations and probably will win. It'll win less than 4. That's my prediction.
Yeah, I agree. I think Bobby D might sneak another one. That's my bold prediction. But
All right. Well, thank you, Kody, for joining me again, as always, to talk The Exorcist. Thank you guys for listening. You can follow us at KHAP Podcast, KHAPODCAST, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, wherever you get your stuff. Follow us on Spotify, rate us, all that jazz. And we'll catch you in the next one.
Stay capping.
Peace.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.